This week in PlayStation, we're talking about PlayStation announcing a lot of TV and film projects, PS5's getting more expensive, and what's next for The Last of Us. We'll have all this and more because this is PS I Love You XOXO. Yo, what's up? Welcome to PS I Love You XOXO. I'm Blessing Adeoye Jr. I'm joined by Sancho West. Barrett's on the ones and twos. And remember, this is your PlayStation podcast. Each and every week, we join you to talk about the hottest topics in PlayStation. If you like that, you can watch it live right here as we record on patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames, or you can watch it on Friday when it posts for everyone on youtube.com/KindaFunnyGames, roosterteeth.com, and on podcast services around the globe. Remember, you can use Epic Creator Code KindaFunny on all Epic Store and Epic in-game purchases like Rocket League and Fortnite to help support the channel. Thank you to our Patreon producers, Fargo Brady, Delaney Twining, James Hastings, and Casey Andrew. Today we're brought to you by MeUndies, but let's start with a PSN message from you. Before we actually get into it, Sancho, welcome to the show.
Oh man, this has always been my PlayStation podcast. I absolutely love it. I love the work that you, Janet, Blessing, and Greg do. You guys are awesome, man. Thank you so much for having me on the show. When Greg hit me up, I was like, I gotta do this. We talking about Last of Us? I'm in.
Dude, I legitimately, when Greg said he was gonna be out, he hit me up and he was like, hey, I'm gonna be out this week. Janet's gonna be out this week because she's doing some fun stuff with MinMax. Who do you want for the show? And I looked at the calendar and I was like, all right, what's going to be going on in the world of PlayStation around this time? And the thing I saw is that Last of Us is coming out next week, right? And we're going to be reviewing it next week. The embargo's out there. We're playing it. We're doing all that good stuff.
Right.
And I was like, well, we should do a Last of Us episode. Like a Last of Us episode would make sense, right? Especially to talk about maybe the future of the Last of Us. Where is Last of Us going to go? And as soon as I had that idea, I was like, oh, you need to get me Sancho West. Because Sancho West is like my brother in arms when it comes to Last of Us, and specifically with Last of Us Factions.
Yes.
We've had really good episodes. We had a Gamescast actually talking about Last of Us Factions. I'm sure we're going to get into a lot of the same conversation here. But I'm like, dude, if I'm going to talk about Last of Us and Factions and all of the future of the Last of Us, I got to have Sancho West on.
I appreciate that, Blessing. I mean, for those people that don't know, I basically talk about Last of Us Factions any moment I can. It's something that I hold true and dear to my heart. And at the same time, I do have a lot of Naughty Dog ties. I did host a couple of things on their Twitch channel. I did work with them when it comes to like announcing E3 things on their Twitch channel. So, Naughty Dog and I go way back. Blessing, I don't know if you know this, brother, but I am still in Uncharted 4. I'm still in it.
How?
My video still plays every time you boot up Uncharted 4 multiplayer. That's me.
Wow.
That's awesome. I didn't know that.
I thought you meant like you were still playing Uncharted 4 multiplayer.
No. I'm still in it, and at the same time.
But so what do you mean your video's in it? Are you in the tutorial? Like what is happening?
So when you boot up Uncharted 4 multiplayer, back in the day they had Uncharted TV in the Uncharted 3 days. They brought it back Uncharted 4. But because of the way things are, I can't get real too into the technical side of things. My video is still there. And because they haven't updated or patched it, this video has been there for 4 years. And every time you play Uncharted TV, it's there. And it's a top 10 place. Look, Naughty Dog, if you want to take it down, that's cool. But I appreciate the love. I appreciate being immortalized in Uncharted multiplayer because I love that game as well because you're the best Naughty Dog multiplayer company, I think, out there. Underrated multiplayer company. But yes, Blessing, I'm still in the game.
That's wild. I never realized that you were this deeply ingrained in the Naughty Dog cinematic universe. Yep. I didn't realize you were actually part of it. So that actually makes you more perfect for this episode of the show. But before we get into an even more Naughty Dog conversation, because that's going to be our entire topic of the show.
Yes, it is.
I want to put in a PSN message from I need money _beats. He writes into patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames, just like you can. It says, what are the top 3 PlayStation exclusive worlds that you would not like to randomly wake up in as yourself? Top 3 PlayStation exclusive worlds that you would not want to randomly wake up in as yourself, Sancho West.
I mean, I would definitely, at the time, I would have said Spider-Man, right? Who wants to wake up in that kind of world? All of a sudden, you're hanging out and going to the Daily Bugle, maybe getting yourself a cup of Joe, and then all of a sudden, the rhinoceros comes out, Rhino. But it's on PC, but I digress. Of course, the easy one would be Last of Us, would be the one, Blair Blessing, right there. Last of Us, who I mean, it is ironic, right? That all of a sudden we experience a pandemic, thankfully not as intense as The Last of Us cordyceps virus, but at the same time, would not want to be a part of that, considering that at a moment's notice, you could be not only eaten by a clicker or whatever, a runner, but stumble upon someone like Billstown. And that is a town in itself that I don't want to stumble across. But that's the easy answer. So let me think about it a bit.
Well,
but Blessing, what about yourself?
On that note, right, you bring up Last of Us, which is the first thing that came to mind for me as well. But
it's an easy answer.
Sony has quite a few post-apocalyptic universes that I think are really fitting for this question. Because for you, Sancho, would you rather not wake up in the Last of Us universe or Death Stranding universe?
You see, Death Stranding, at least there's technology. You know what I mean? You got the cool tech.
You just stay inside.
Yeah, you could stay inside. There's holograms. You could have all the energy drinks out there. You know, Conan O'Brien's still around. You know, Jeff Keighley's still around. Like, who would not want to be a part of that universe? And at the same time, you have these beautiful, lush, like Lord of the Rings-esque landscapes to go around, and you got this cool.
But you're not walking those though, right? You're not going to risk the time fall, the rain touching your skin, fastly aging you. Spoilers.
This is true, but I do enjoy the exoskeleton technology. I think that in itself is rad. I mean, in The Last of Us, you're literally scrambling for every single thing, and of course, in The Last of Us, man is the most dangerous enemy out there. I don't want to be someone's food, Blessing. That's not my vibe.
Well, then, what about Last of Us universe versus Days Gone universe?
Oh, you know what? There's always that theory that they kind of share the same thing. I really believe they're really interconnected, and we'll definitely get into that when we talk about what was just recently announced. But the thing about Days Gone is that it's much more, I would say, Mad Maxy, right? You have these huge camps of people, but I think the most scariest thing in Days Gone is zombie animals. We didn't really get into that much when we got into I remember the rumor that Last of Us Part 2 would have zombified animals or cordyceps animals that would be attacking you, but we didn't get into that. It was a tease. I remember seeing like a big scratch on the walls, and everyone was like, "Oh, there's going to be cordyceps bears out there," but it looks like Days Gone took that ticket.
Yeah. Okay, then in that case, right, going on with that same note, right, the post-apocalyptic Sony universe is Last of Us universe versus Horizon Zero Dawn. Which one are you trying to live in?
Jeez, you're really putting me on the brakes here.
Yeah, man.
Okay, look. I'm not athletic. I don't think I could cast up those big old giraffe-looking robotic structures. And at the same time, dude, I am not a tribal person, dude. I'm not gonna share anything that I find. I'm a hoarder, dude. So I would fit more into the Last of Us world. I'd be like Sancho's Town will be a place you do not want to cross into.
Sancho's Town to be sick.
That's right. Sancho's Town won't be sick.
It's just at least there's like community in at least like civilization is like kind of persevered in Horizon's world, right? Like you still have towns, like, and if you're just waking up as like a random dude, you're not like waking up as
but it's like
me
though.
Yeah, it's just you.
Me.
And it's like you're not the one like going on Aloy's journey. You're just gonna like go off and like live in a village and stuff.
The moment someone Barrett tells me go collect berries, I'm like, nah, man, I'm good. I'm just. I'm gonna
see. I would probably. I'll probably go Horizon, right, for a universe that I prefer to live in. For me, if I had to like rank Sony universes in terms of the most deadly, Last of Us is up there. I'd probably prefer Last of Us over Days Gone because the kind of zombies, the fast running, gigantic pack of zombies. I'm just fucked. I don't want to live in that universe. At least in The Last of Us, you have the town. Is it Jackson that they start off in Last of Us Part 2? Tommy's town. Yeah. At least there you have. Well, you have walls, you have community, you have electricity that they figured out in those games, right? Like, at least you have that community to protect you. And it is a scary world, right? And that's one of the ones where it's like, man is the big fear, right? You don't want to fuck with other people, as we learned in The Last of Us Part 2. But I'd feel like I'd have a better chance there in a community as opposed to the Days Gone world. And then Horizon, Horizon is a game filled with communities, right? And like, I'm gonna be roughing it. I am not that kind of person either. I am not that survival dude. But I think I could survive in Horizon easier than either Last of Us or Days Gone.
I have the whole thing. Here it is. Last of Us wins because PlayStation Vita is still around. There it is, baby. That universe still exists. You still got video games, man. It is the ultimate determining factor. Which world has video games? Last of Us does.
Death Stranding, that universe definitely has some video games. I forget what references. They got like Half-Life shit in there. So they got some PC gamers, and they got the fucking long nets from Horizon. Like, they got video games in that world too. But I'm not living in Death Stranding world. In fact, I'm putting that maybe alongside Days Gone of like, I'm not fucking with this shit. You do have the inside, right? You can be a homebody, but in that game you got Troy Baker being a terrorist, drowning these cities in the fucking brown goop. I'm good on that.
It just hit me. Returnal. I would not want to live in that world.
No, that's a space. That's just our world, but like a different planet.
And the argument is Returnal. It's like is that really just happening inside her mind? You know,
it's true.
Yeah.
I don't know. Returnal, and I think of Infamous as well. Super people running around, like that's another world maybe I don't want to live in, because NPCs have a bad time in all video games, no matter what. And we all know that we would be an NPC in said universe. I've always had this question, like, I would love to live in Nintendo Land. That sounds great, but I don't know, dude. Would I be a Goomba? I don't want to live in that world if I'm a Goomba.
I love how you immediately resign as you're going to be an NPC. You don't even think of yourself as the main character.
No, that's why I play video games, Blessing. To experience honestly, the main character adventure.
Now that you make that point of, you're going to be an NPC, I do not want to be in Spider-Man's New York. Spider-Man's New York might be the bottom of the list. Yeah, you're right. Because, like, shit goes down in Spider-Man's New York. You want me to fuck around with Doc Ock and Rhino and fucking Green Goblin, even though I know he's not been introduced yet, but
and live chat's also point like God of War. Like, would you want to live in God of War as just a random NPC? Because at one point, if you're talking about the original God of War games, you're just like a dude kind of like walking around, and then Kratos kills you for a puzzle. You know, like that sucks.
If you're lucky.
But Heavily Sword has that kind of vibe too, but it's less aggressive. Heavily Sword was one of those ones that it just shows you how vast and great these franchises are. I think I would love to live in Sly Cooper's world if you want to have that. That seems like a fun, cool world to be in.
I can live in Ratchet and Clank's world, I think. On like one of them nice planets. If the planet has Dr. Nefarious on there, keep me away from that planet. But any of the other more basic planets in Ratchet's world, I think, would be a fun time. They got cool technology there.
Yeah, absolutely. Wouldn't want to live in Saints Row though.
No, they're just glitching all over the place. Oh my god, just fucking no clip into a wall. No, I'm good. Sancho, it is time. Let's get into the topic of the show. What is next for The Last of Us? I asked this question because, of course, Last of Us Part 1 is coming out in a week. That is going to be the remake to the original Last of Us game. Like I mentioned earlier, we're reviewing it, we're playing it, we're going to talk about it on next week's Gamescast, if I had to guess correctly. I'm not checked up on Tim, but the way these things usually go, we review on Gamescast, and PS Love You, I'm sure we'll do like a follow-up episode of like all your questions answered or something like that on PS Love You next week. So stay tuned for that. But with that coming up, I think we're all starting to get inflicted with Last of Us fever. Right, all the cordyceps are growing on our arms and legs. But then also, Last of Us Factions is coming out sometime soon. Right, we're gonna get a lot of info on that next year, according to Neil Druckmann. We've been talking a lot about the Last of Us TV show that HBO is working on. We got the trailer for that recently. And then I think there's the question of what else is Naughty Dog working on. Right, are they working on a new IP? Are they working on whatever the next mainline single player Last of Us game is? There are so many questions up in the air about the Last of Us, and I want to talk about it because I think it's a fun topic. So to start this off, Sancho, what is your history with The Last of Us?
So I have a very unique history because in my roots, in my blood as a gamer is multiplayer. And so when which is so interesting to me because when The Last of Us came out, I immediately saw the multiplayer mode and I jumped into it. Like my first attraction to it was from a multiplayer leak. Like I remember watching it. Surprise, Naughty Dog has leaks everywhere, but there was a leak for the multiplayer mode Factions, and I jumped in. I was like, this looks cool. I loved Uncharted multiplayer. This is going to be my jam. And so first day, booted into multiplayer, and I grinded that for like weeks and weeks, and I started making content for it on YouTube. And then I jumped into the single player, played it once, and I was good. Like, I'm good. Like, I thought the story was fantastic, and yes, look at that Factions. Anyway, and then after that, I went to Naughty Dog and was like, hey, you guys have a great multiplayer. Let's stream it. Let me interview devs. And for a couple of hours, we'll call it Gaming with the Dogs, is interview the devs, and then we'll play Factions in the background for any of the ones good meeting. That is my vast history as a content creator and as a game player, as a player, is with Last of Us Factions, more so than the single player, because I think the single player story for the original Last of Us, are we talking about part 1 and 2 or just part 1 right now?
Part 1 and 2.
Okay, part 1 and 2. So part 1, I played it and I loved the story, and then I played Factions and I grinded that. But then when The Last of Us 2 part 2 came along, as a multiplayer player, they announced supremely early that they're not going to have Factions, and so that kind of took the Factions community by surprise, considering that we thought we would be a part of it. And then they put that statement out there saying that we are going to make a multiplayer, and so it was dormant. So I focused on the story in itself, and I that kind of story is a much more brutal experience. And as someone that used to study acting and theater and things of that sort, it is such a no pun intended, blessing to be able to experience such a visceral story from a safe place as your home when you're playing video games, and be able to immerse yourself in a world so daunting and so scary as The Last of Us, and at the same time Naughty Dog being the, I like to call them video game magicians. They're able to do so much stuff in tech with the limited hardware, and that's what's so interesting to me as I am wrapping up this question about what's my history with it, is that what's daunting and interesting to me is that The Last of Us, for the first time, has the technology to do awesome stuff. And I feel like, I don't know if I'm wrong, Blessing, but I feel like the beat of the internet is they're not as interested in it as their technical, like all this new rebuild of The Last of Us Part 1. It's not as, you know what I mean? It doesn't feel like Naughty Dog would have expected the community to be not as hyped for it as much. Does that make sense?
Sancho,
I know you guys talked about this before, but that's how I feel right now.
Ray Briggs writes into patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames, just like you can, and says, is the writing on the wall for The Last of Us Part 1 remake? Maybe it's just the general negativity Twitter brings to everything, but I feel like gamers and outlets are just waiting to rip this game apart for not doing enough to justify $70, regardless of what changes it actually makes. Do you feel like the writing's on the wall for Last of Us Part 1? Do you think people are generally down on it?
That's the thing I'm getting at. I mean, they have already remastered it. Now it's a rebuild. They're doing a lot of social media posts explaining why it's worth its money, explaining how the tech. I mean, they even posted about the adaptive triggers and the water gun, and it's just such a. I don't know, man. It just feels like, the thing about Naughty Dog is that they feel very artisan when it comes to video games, right? They feel like they're like that restaurant that doesn't have a sign on the building. It doesn't do commercials. It doesn't advertise. It doesn't do specials. It doesn't do any of that because it doesn't need it. It's word of mouth. You understand that this game's going to be amazing. You're going to play it. But I think with today's internet is like, it's kind of changed, because the reason why I feel like Naughty Dog has to talk about its rebuild and technology and things of that sort, because I feel what really puts it behind the 8-ball, Blessing, is that the internet is changed. Social media has changed in a sense that even social platforms, you can't really talk about violence in the video game. You can't talk about how gory it is. You can't talk about how, intense it is with the violence and things like that. So I feel like Naughty Dog has to pivot in some way to be able to talk about its game without really getting into the social platform suppression when it comes to talking about gratuitous gore, violence. You can't, you know what I mean? They can't really lean into that anymore. I mean, it just shows us, even Game of Thrones, like the latest one, they don't have that much gratuitous violence as the original Game of Thrones, because they're understanding that audiences are not all about that anymore.
Yeah, I think you touch on something with the artesian nature of Naughty Dog, where I do think that as they announced Last of Us Part 1, they were like, hey, it's Last of Us, but with PS5 technology, with the graphics, Last of Us Part 2, right? It's going to look better. It's going to run better. All these things. I think they were thinking that they were going to announce that, and everybody was going to go, oh, snap, here we go. Last of Us again. I think they thought that they were going to get a bigger, better response than what they got. And I think that speaks to kind of a disconnect between Naughty Dog as a studio, PlayStation as a company, and what they got going on, especially with the games going up to $70, versus where the audience is at with how we perceive remakes and remasters and all this stuff, right? Last of Us is a game that I would have said, this doesn't need a remaster. This doesn't need a remake, right? Like, a game came out originally in 2013, got a remaster again on PS4. Like, I can go back to Last of Us remastered and have a good time. Right, that game is still a banger. That game is still great, and I think a lot of people feel that. Right, I think that is a general sentiment of, well, why do this when also this game, I'm pretty sure, is on the PS Plus collection. Right, like,
yes.
Do I really need Naughty Dog to put one of these out and then charge $70 for it? Especially, like, let alone the conversation about multiplayer and how the multiplayer is not going to be in Last of Us Part 1, and so, like, what does that do for value, right? When the original game was $60, also, what does that do for value, right? I think you start to nitpick all these different things in terms of the content of the package that might not live up to the content that you would expect from that kind of package, that would end up with audiences kind of feeling like they're being nickeled and dimed a bit. And for Naughty Dog, I think the thing is, hey, we're putting in work into this, right? We're remaking it from the ground up. If you look at the comparison shots from Digital Foundry and other websites, when you look at scenes from Last of Us Remastered versus Last of Us Part 1, it's like No, this is a remake. This is from the ground up, right? Like the scenes may look the same, everything may be one for one or whatever, but like this is polished, right? Like certain textures, certain assets seem to be replaced. Like this looks like a current gen video game, and so I think there's a certain sense of, hey, we're Naughty Dog and we're putting $70 worth of work into this, but then also a big part of the purpose of this remake is going to be for it to speak to people that are coming into The Last of Us for the first time, either because maybe they didn't own a PS3 or maybe they skipped the PS4 generation. Maybe they played, for some reason, they played The Last of Us Part 1 and didn't actually get into Part 2. Or I think the biggest one being The Last of Us TV show is coming out on HBO, and that's going to expose a great audience into the game, right? So many people are going to be exposed to The Last of Us IP through that HBO show. Cool. Let's have something that they can readily jump into by the time they watch that. That'll expose them to the world of The Last of Us. And, is $70 too much for that? Probably, from the consumer perspective. But I think for the PlayStation perspective, they're seeing it as a whole new launch for quote unquote Last of Us Part 1.
Right.
And so I think that's where it comes down. I don't think the writing's on the wall necessarily. I think it's Last of Us. It's going to sell. People are going to play it. The Last of Us IP, I think, is too quality and too popular at this point to have anything really be the writing on the wall. Even Last of Us Part 2 came out, and a lot of people didn't like Last of Us Part 2 because of story things, right? But, like, I'm sure one day Sony maybe puts out, or Naughty Dog maybe puts out Last of Us Part 3, and it'll probably still sell gangbusters because it's Naughty Dog and it's The Last of Us.
Exactly. I mean, that's the thing. Like, there's always that comparison, Blessing, between Naughty Dog and Rockstar. They could literally do anything. They could show up at the last minute. They could show concept art. They could show a title, and the internet will explode with the excitement of it. But I think it's so much interesting is like Rockstar understands that rather than making this huge thing of like, for example, Rockstar doesn't make a huge thing about remaking anything online or anything. They kind of just let it happen. They let their updates happen and they let it go, right? And it's affordable. I mean, you're the GTA guy. You know how like affordable GTA 5 is, even though it's so old. And I feel like GTA feels very consumer friendly in that aspect compared to the difference of the Naughty Dog saying like, this is a $70 game. We built this from the ground up. But that's the thing about Naughty Dog. That's why I say they're magicians, because it never really was about graphics for them. They always got the juice out of the PlayStation 3. They literally got one of the best looking games of that generation. Almost the last like stanza almost of that console, because they're slick with it. They understand how to use it.
They've done that multiple generations in a
row multiple
now. Between Last of Us 1 on PS3 and then Last of Us Part 2 on PS4.
Exactly. And then now they're here with all the power, and there's like saying, look at how great this game is. But when we all know that PlayStation and are the gamers of PlayStation, if we wanted something graphic intensive and all those kinds of things, we just go play a PC game, right? And this may come out on PC as well. But the whole wait, it is coming on PC, right? Last of Us
Part 1. No, I don't think they've announced it. Or have they announced it for later?
I'm pretty sure it's it doesn't have it like a date yet, but they've confirmed that they're working on a PC version.
Right. Okay. So that's the thing. It just feels like I agree, definitely misstep onto when they announce it. I think the good news is though, Blessing, because it's not all humdrum. It's not all about right on the wall type beat. I think the best thing about it is that Naughty Dog has changed the culture inside the most. And I think that's great. They have multiple teams now working on multiple projects to go back to what does Naughty Dog does next. They have a better culture in terms of crunch and things like that. So many people are talking about that this is the first game that they haven't relied on crunch and things of that sort. So that's good to hear that Naughty Dog internally is healthy. So they could definitely kind of make their next project, which is one of them is that Last of Us standalone multiplayer, in a healthy manner. I just feel that, the pandemic has thrown so many wrenches into a lot of developers' minds that I feel that if this game came out a year earlier, like when PlayStation 5 was kind of new, I think
this was like a launch title. I guess
that's what I'm saying.
The conversation being different.
I think it'd be a lot different, but now that we're, PlayStation 5's been out for a while, we're starving for something like exciting to talk about when it comes to the PlayStation 5 console with exclusivity. And for The Last of Us to be that thing again, it's a good food. It's delicious. I love it. It's made by one of the best in the world. But at the same time, it's like
Ramsay right here.
Yes, right. It's some fire right here. But at the same time, I think I think it has the hugest hurdle up against it, and I think it's going in. It already started off with the wrong foot, and I think people, once you get that, it reminds me like the whole time you were talking about Blessing. It just reminds me of the Spider-Man in the puddles thing. The internet just loves focusing on some random
or
stuff.
even, I mean, honestly, what even more so reminds me of, speaking of Spider-Man, would be the Spider-Man remastered situation when Spider-Man Miles Morales came out, and you would have to pay for like the deluxe edition. I think it was what, $70 or something like that to get remastered bundled in for Spider-Man 2018, and you wouldn't be able to buy that separately. And I'm sure there was a large group of people that were just like, well, let me buy Spider-Man remastered. It's that weird new PlayStation thing of, hey, we're in the PS5 era, we're trying to be fucking, artisan, and we're trying to also like, we're trying to get that money. We're spending money on this shit, and we're trying to get all the money we can. So it feels like nickeling and diming a lot of the time.
One of the things I want to point out is Naughty Dog does I love them, and they have my utmost respect as always. My whole career would not be here without them, but they do weird things like that. Like, for example, in order to play the Uncharted 4 beta, you would have to buy the Uncharted collection, which was like $30 plus $40 at the time to be able to have access to the beta at first. So there was like things like that. Was like the multiplayer community was like, sure, I want to play Uncharted 4 multiplayer. I love it, but you have to buy to get in. You would have to get the collection at first. So that was like, well, I'm like, I don't care, $30, take my money, right? This is me that they're going for. And at the same time, Last of Us Factions is PlayStation 3. It's mad old, but you could still buy stuff for it. I mean, at most. It literally, that game everything should be unlocked for it. They should have everything good to go versus having to pay for cosmetics. And maybe that keeps the lights on for those servers. But for example, if you wanted to buy a samurai helmet for the Last of Us Factions, you would have to buy a pack that's like at the time like $20 plus or $30 to be able to buy the samurai helmet. So it's like stuff like that that's weird. And there's stuff that they still do that's old school, that I think that they definitely need to take a look at themselves and figure out new ways to present their greatness, right? Their artistry, you know what I mean?
Well, I think we'll get into that a bit with Last of Us multiplayer, right?
Yeah.
I want to bring in some questions for the audience because, of course, before the show, I reached out to the audience. I said, hey, we're gonna be talking about what's next for The Last of Us. Write in with your questions, write in with your comments, write in with your thoughts. I want to start off with Pickled Joystick, who writes in and says,
great name.
A great name, actually.
Great name.
What's next for The Last of Us? Personally, I would like to see Naughty Dog take a break from The Last of Us after the new multiplayer game and maybe work on a new IP. When they do come back to the franchise, I would want a completely new setting / characters to see how the outbreak affected different areas. Now, there's multiple things I think to take note in here, right? Like, we all know the Last of Us multiplayer project is the next thing coming out of Naughty Dog. You're talking about value, and you're talking about Last of Us Part 1 being $70, right? Like, what is next for Naughty Dog in terms of price, that premium nature that they have as a studio, right? Let alone PlayStation as a publisher. I'm of the mind that Last of Us Factions, if you want that shit to pop, I think that shit might have to be free to play. Like, I don't know if you can charge $30, $60, $70 for a multiplayer project and have it be this ongoing thing that you're continually adding updates to that is going to survive over time, right? I think you got to get that on maybe a battle pass, maybe cosmetics, maybe both, right? And ride that wave.
100% agree. Free to play is the only way multiplayers, they have a good shot of succeeding. The only thing that Last of Us multiplayer has is there's hordes of faction fans that are waiting for something, itching for something. There's going to be a division between the faction fans that is not going to be the standard arena type factions of supply raid and things of that sort. But I agree, you need to have a free to play to be able to keep up with today's model of multiplayers. Even if you think about it, Blessing, even like EA originals of Rocket Arena, $15, no thank you, right? That was one of the really great multiplayer experience. No thank you. Knockout City, $10, no thank you, right? It's just something to be able to get into. It's like the Trojan horse, to be able to introduce people like, hey, this is the game. It's a great way to market your game. And at the same time, that's why Warzone is free to play. Call of Duty had Blackout. You needed to buy the game to be able to play Blackout. When I first started streaming it, people were asking me, is this free to play because of Fortnite? Is this free to play? No, it's not free to play. It's a $60 game. You have to be able to play it. So
every big multiplayer project is going free to play.
it just makes so much sense. And I think like if you think about the acquisitions that they were able to pick up Bungie, I think Bungie would be able to help.
Destiny too, free to play.
To be able to help Naughty Dog do that, because Naughty Dog is historically fantastic making the multiplayer in terms of longevity with the way that their system was structured before the studio, where they would pull people off of projects to help with the big game. Now they have multiple teams, especially the ones working on The Last of Us. There's some fantastic people working on this multiplayer standalone. To answer Pickle Joystick's question, I don't think you're going to get a completely new set or characters that are happening in different effective areas, because that is what the multiplayer experience will be. My gut tells me is they want you to experience the Last of Us world, to go back to the initial question, to be a part of this Last of Us universe as this character in a setting. Is it Battle Royale? Don't know. Is it a looter Escape from Tarkov type? But the whole goal for them, I think, Blessing, and I've always talked about this, is that if a studio could figure out how to do a narrative multiplayer experience that leans in narrative and immersive gameplay, they will figure out the next frontier when it comes to an experience for gamers. That I think it's going to be like, you don't need to be a Sweat or an FPS all-star to probably play this game. I think you just need to be smart, tactical, have tactics, and understand the game mechanics a little bit to be able to be successful. And I think that's what Naughty Dog is going for. They want a game that is kind of attainable to play.
You want a game that is that's going to speak to the audience that you already have, right? I don't think they don't want to cut off the Last of Us audience because their game is too difficult or too tactical or too unapproachable for people to get into, right? And like, there's a lot to dig into here, right? I think speaking from the free to play thing, one wrench in this that I think could be fascinating is PS Plus Extra, with how PS Plus has expanded.
Yeah,
I wonder. Because for PlayStation, it's so hard to imagine like a PlayStation free-to-play game for a company that is so much about getting their money and so much about that premium. Like, hey, you're paying for this because we're giving you the quality for it. I could see a Last of Us Factions being hey, PlayStation Plus Extra is how you get into it, right? Or you pay $30 or something like that, right? But like PlayStation Plus Extra is how they push. How they really push access to this game. I think that could be a very possible thing, and I think that could be like a standard PlayStation's way of having their cake and eating it too, compared to Game Pass, where Game Pass is every first-party Xbox game is showing up on the service. PlayStation's not going to do that because you're going to pay $70 for God of War Ragnarok. But if it is, hey, Last of Us Factions is going to be on there, and Ghost of Tsushima Legends 2 is going to be on there, and like Haven Studios' next multiplayer game is going to be on there. If they can create this, I guess, class of multiplayer suite. That is, hey, it's kind of like a subscription service for multiplayer games, but it is every PlayStation multiplayer thing they're working on first party. I could possibly see them doing that.
And especially it breaks my heart a little bit too, Sancho. But like, especially thinking where PlayStation's at now, like they both kind of feed each other in the longevity of like how long someone's gonna subscribe to PS Plus. If there is more incentive to have like a living, breathing game, like the Last of Us Factions new multiplayer stuff, right? And then it's like then they're more encouraged to support that longer than they might have originally if there is more of like a like the traditional sense where there's like more of a buy-in to the game. So I think that's probably going to be the medium that we see PlayStation go with for the multiplayer stuff.
I can also see it too because PS Plus Essential is already needed to play multiplayer stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, you're going to need this to play the game anyway.
Is that needed for Fortnite though?
Not for Fortnite. For free to play stuff, no.
Okay.
But I can see the argument of like, hey, you're subscribed to this to do multiplayer, to play multiplayer games. Just bump that subscription up one level for access to these games. I think PlayStation would do that.
The thing about it, the reason why I said it's heartbreaking is because it's like, I've always said the multiplayer studio, the guys, the devs that work on this game, and all of them, the dogs, so to speak. They're really good, man, they did so much with so little when it comes to what they have. They have to borrow assets. They got to borrow a developer to help them out with their art and things of that sort. That why put another, an obstacle in their way from them, from experiencing this, man. Like Vinith, one of the guys that's leading this project for the Last of Us multiplayer, that dude eats, sleeps, breathes multiplayers for like all different genres and everything. This guy has collections of retro games. I've been to this man's house. This guy is awesome. And I want their art just to be like, don't put it behind some paywall. Put it like in a museum, let people see the world of multiplayer. I mean, we always talked about multiplayer. It's always a joke among the factions community is that no one knows it exists. They had to change it from factions to factions MP, and still people didn't know it exists. There are probably people right now listening to the PS I Love You podcast that still don't know that multiplayer exists for Remastered. It's there. It's great. We talked about it. It should have been a part of the built-up, ground-up experience. At least make that multiplayer free to play and see how it goes. Let that be like a great testing grounds for it. But Blessing, if they want to do this they want to do this the subscription model, I understand. Business makes the world go round, but it's going to be another bummer of a hurdle to go over as a factions fan.
Now, going back to the conversation of story and narrative, and also how do they how do they create a multiplayer game that is approachable for the Last of Us audience that already exists, because they want to get that audience in there. I do think that it is going to be a mixture of things, right? Last of Us Factions taking so long to develop, I think means that it's probably going to be something beefy, especially it being separated from the Last of Us base single player game, right? It not being included in Last of Us Part 2 or Part 1 has to, I think, speak to, no, we want this thing to exist and be its own thing, right? And I look back and I think back to the Jeff Keighley's Summer Game Fest and Neil Druckmann coming on stage and showing off the concept art, and it's seeming like this, oh snap, all right, they're creating something here, right? It looks like it takes place, at least this scene looks like San Francisco, and you have people looking down at like an area with more people in the background and all this shit, right? They're creating something that's going to have some sort of shared space, whether it's battle royale or whether it's what I would predict, which is something that is more Destiny like, right? I think it'll be something that is PvE and PvP. I think the PvE stuff will be where you get the narrative stuff. Similar to a Destiny campaign, I wouldn't be surprised if it is, hey, once a year we're dropping a Last of Us campaign, and that is what you're talking about, Sancho.
That's good.
Yeah, and
I like it.
Pickle Joystick in the questions, right? Who says, completely new setting, new characters, see how the outbreak affected different areas. I think you could do that with a yearly Last of Us campaign and Last of Us Factions, where it is, hey, here's and this is a combination of a lot of ideas, right? Here's a let's say 6-hour campaign, right? Because those take a lot of work. I don't think it's gonna be 15 hours or anything like that, but like, here's a 6-hour campaign that takes place in Jersey, and it is you playing alongside your friends and doing co-op, going up against NPC hunters and clickers and runners and all that stuff. Maybe doing maybe meeting characters in universe, and like having these narratives that are, hey, like our camp is on our last legs. Like, if you go out and find this specific kind of medicine that's like very unique to the world of Last of Us and bring it back, we will help you out in this way. You'll get this new exclusive weapon or whatever the thing is, right? I think there are a lot of cues you can take from Destiny in terms of how to add in campaigns, let alone dungeons and raids and stuff like that that'll make it viable. And then you also have a PvP mode for people that are of that ilk, that I think would be what we have already with Last of Us 1, which is like the survivor mode and the 4v4s and all that stuff, but then also put in a battle royale mode for the people that really want that, because I think Last of Us would work with a banger battle royale mode. I think the survival aspects of it, the looting, the crafting, the listen mode, all that stuff would lend itself really well to a battle royale mode. And I know I'm thinking, big scope here, but I think this will be a fucking hit of a game.
So I want to live in this universe that you speak of, dude. I want to be in it so badly as someone who plays battle royales, as someone that loves factions, the world. Dude, that is perfect. Like literally take what Call of Duty's doing. PvP goes right into the battle royale. They wash each other's hands. You unlock things in PvP, you can take it to the battle royale. You unlock things in battle royale, you have it for the PvP. You unlock things like in Destiny, the Crucible. You unlock something in the PvE, you can take it to the PvP. Like, there is something here that is building, and for them, like, let me tell you the moment to see Neil Druckmann go on the world stage and say that they're making a standalone multiplayer. The amount of rejoice for all the Naughty Dog multiplayer fans to have the big dog, Neil Druckmann, say that is amazing. Like, that to me is enough to say it's serious. This thing is serious, And just like Uncharted Lost Legacy, they were making a DLC and they say, wait a minute, this is too big of a game. Let's go bigger, right? We're going to release a full-fledged game. And I think one of the things as a Naughty Dog observant is that they always build on their titles. They started doing wide open linear, right? Remember that term that they were talking about where you could go in a world and just think about how big that one area was in Uncharted Lost Legacy and how vast that like they had little spokes of little areas that she could go into and find a little piece before she went out all over in that Jeep. That's a pretty big map. And you don't need 100 people running around a battle royale map or anything of that sort. You can make it intimate.
Oh, yeah.
You can talk about 16. Rumbleverse right now is 40. We don't need crazy amounts of people. 32, 20 players will even feel intense knowing
1000%.
that there's clickers around. You got Gustavo's music hitting all of a sudden. What's that sound? I am in a place where I need this shotgun and I'm in trouble. Like, that's what I'm talking about. Now, granted, I don't want to get too crazy right now, blessing, because Hunt Showdown has done these things where you playing these kind of things that hunt monsters, you get contracts and bounty hunters, and there's people out there. It has been done before. The cycle, Frontier, it's kind of like that as well. You're out there grabbing stuff, taking away, Escape from Tarkov. But for a PlayStation to do a multiplayer type thing that's exclusive, that is rare in this generation of PlayStation, in my mind.
Yeah. And I mean, right now, PlayStation also has their PC push that they're making too. And I wouldn't be surprised if, we're not seeing we're not seeing any PlayStation day and date. We're releasing this on PC and PlayStation 5 at the same time. I would think that the multiplayer projects would be the time and place to do that.
Oh, man.
Because you want player base, you want as many people as possible playing
You need
this
it.
thing together.
Crossplay.
You would want that crossplay.
You
And
need
hopefully that by that time, maybe we could get a PlayStation PC launcher. So it is going to be cross progression as well. Like, I think that you're earning trophies at both places at the same time, right? Like, that would all make sense for that if you're
It
working
feels
on a
weird,
multiplayer
though.
push.
It feels weird, right? It's so on PlayStation to be able to have. It's so weird, but it's possible. I mean, it's totally
and I think
up there.
It's the thing that makes the most sense. Like, even as non-PlayStation as it is, it would just make the most sense to be like, hey, yeah, we want more people in this multiplayer thing.
Exactly.
Cool, let's make a PlayStation launcher and let them earn their trophies. That way, like, they feel comfortable transferring back and forth between PC and PlayStation.
This is the thing what killed PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. I love that game. It's so interesting to see multiverses be a pop-off, right? PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale has an opportunity to come back. Okay, listen to me. I know we're talking about Last of Us, but that game was awesome. But what hurt it was it was exclusive. And what hurt it as well was the original developer that came out with it went under. So PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale, it can't be exclusive to PlayStation because there's just not enough players anymore. Everyone wants to play. They don't want to buy a PlayStation. They want to play with their Xbox friends. They want to play with their PC friends. But I had to get my PlayStation All-Star Battle Royale in.
Of course. And you got to add Abby into it. Now that we got Abby from Last of Us Part 2. So it's time.
That'd be sick. There's been this one quick thing as well. Like, Blessing, I'm going to throw this question to you. Do you think, as someone who plays Fortnite as well, do you think they'll no? Neil Druckmann said no, but you think Last of Us will have outfits in Fortnite?
Oh, that's a good question. I think so. Yeah. Did Neil? I missed this. Neil Druckmann said no.
Yeah, there was a rumor talking about it, and Neil was like, "No, we don't have anything." I mean, maybe Barrett could back me up. I remember I've seen it somewhere, but the thing about it is, I don't know because they were so precious about Joel and Ellie in the first one, Blessing, because there was always a question when we streamed the Gaming with the Dogs. They were like, why isn't there any Joel and Ellie skin? Like, there was a Nathan Drake and all of them and their multiplayers. And they're like, well, we didn't feel that in terms of factions. Yeah, see, though, he squashes the Last of Us Fortnite crossover reports. It's a false rumor.
And this is July 2022. So this
is very, very recent. So it's like they were so like precious about Ellie. They didn't want to see an Ellie running around multiplayer getting killed like the way and all those kinds of things. But it's interesting to me.
Why though? Like,
I don't know.
It's Last of Us is already a violent game.
She has so many death scenes already in case if you die.
No, I don't know.
Because here's the thing, right? If you're like, oh yeah, the creators of Dragon Ball Z don't want Goku to run around with a gun, I'd be like, makes sense. Ellie from Last of Us, the most violent fucking vicious game in the world. Like, you don't want them to be in Fortnite? What? Because it's too cute? It's too cash grabby?
No,
Kratos is in there.
I know, but at the same time, it's interesting because Nathan Drake's in it because of they had Tom Holland on Nathan Drake with Uncharted, and then they had the outfit edit style with Nathan Drake in the video game. But you see, the thing is, like, they will fit. Maybe they don't want him to do the gritty. I don't know, Blessing. I mean, that could totally be it.
Listen,
but
we've already given up the ground, right? Like everybody's doing the gritty in that video game. They got Superman doing the gritty. Like if Superman can do it, I think Joel Miller can do it. I don't think it'd be a big problem.
I would. Someone in our live chat also suggests, or it's been Dog Nick 96. I think they could have HBO outfits in Fortnite. I wouldn't be surprised by that. Like specifically, it's like Pedro Pascal.
They got Oscar or Pedro Pascal.
Yeah, and Lady Mormont in there.
I was gonna say Game
like
of Thrones
like the Uncharted Tom Holland skins, you know.
That's my thing is I don't think it'll happen with Last of Us Part 1 because how recent that Neil quote is, but maybe either the HBO show or Last of Us Faction multiplayer. I think that would have some kind of crossover.
My joke about it is the reason why he's not in Fortnite is because they have a golf club pickaxe.
I was gonna make that joke. I was gonna be like, oh yeah, Abby's pickaxe for sure is gonna be a fucking golf club, smashing down buildings and smashing down Joel Miller's face with it. Now, you brought up Uncharted Lost Legacy. We got a question here from Matt Dowse who writes in to patreon.com/kindafunnygames, just like you can, and says, "Team, one thing I keep coming back to is my desire for more Left Behind-esque stories in the Last of Us universe, especially seeing how well Sony has done with their smaller Spider-Man titles in Miles Morales. What shorter stories would you like to see told in this world? I'd love to see an international take on the story, how an island nation like the UK would react to the virus first reaching our shores." Matt Dowse, I like this question. Sancho, what smaller stories in the Last of Us universe would you like be told?
Well, Matt Dowse, a great question. 28 Days Later would be that movie that you're talking about. That is a great example of what would happen if the UK had that. But in regards to Last of Us, I would love to see Bill. Like Bill had that great story about it. I know in a rundown we're going to talk about the show, but Bill having everything being told through the letters, like anything that was told through the letters or the voice recordings, I think that would be an easy way to dive back into the factions world. I think that would have been a quite interesting thing to me, that if if Naughty Dog wanted to show off, hey, we built something from the ground up using all this technology again, what if they would have, instead of that, like, hey, we're releasing a free-to-play demo. Demos are cool. I don't know why demos don't exist anymore, but here's a little demo.
PlayStation, they make you pay for them now. You just got to get PlayStation Plus Premium.
Yeah, they exist on Premium.
But like, would it be cool if they're like, here's a Billstown demo of something we cut, or that would feel like it's something new that we've never seen before, and you're like, whoa, dude, look at this technology, and we're seeing Billstown for the first time from Bill's eyes. Maybe we play as Bill and his partner at the time. We get to experience that story. I think that'd be cool. Any of the soldier stories of experiencing being held down in a horde mode would be a cool thing to be able to experience as well. Any of those, like I mentioned, those tape recorder stories were awesome. Even the story of maybe you're hunting down Joel. I remember they talked about that one scene between Abby and Ellie at the end. They were telling me that they kind of had that idea as if you're facing another person, like a PvP. So that's why Ellie was able to move so well, and she felt very realistic in that battle. But yeah, I think any of those kinds of stories, and I think Naughty Dog could have eased us into this part 1 rebuilt with exploring those stories that we love so much from just reading those notes.
I never thought about that Ellie versus Abby sequence toward the end of that game as oh no, we're gonna have another player enter your game like Journey and have it be
that'd be great.
That'd be fucking crazy. If they were to pull that off.
Elden Ring all of a sudden, dude.
Yeah. Oh my god, that'd be insane. The one that comes to mind for me, and I can't decide whether this is a Uncharted Lost Legacy style spinoff, or if this would just be The Last of Us Part 3, would be for it to pick up the story of Abby and Lev and them continuing on looking for the Fireflies. I feel like they set those characters up to have a future, especially Lev. Lev feels so prime to have his own game, right? In the way that like playing through Last of Us Part 1 or playing through Last of Us 1 as Joel, right, with Ellie. Ellie feels so set up and so fleshed out as a character, right? And it feels so natural transitioning into her shoes for Last of Us Part 2. Lev, I feel the same thing, right? If they wanted to make a game that is all about Lev, or maybe it is 5-10 years later and you are playing a grown version of Lev and you're in some new territory in The Last of Us, I think that could have a lot of potential, and that could be a really cool thing to explore. I would like that passing of the baton of the characters, because I feel like I feel like I've gotten enough juice out of the Joel and Ellie story. I think that's where I'm at. Like, and you know, obviously Joel. Spoilers. At this point, if you've not played Last of Us from Last of Us Part 2, I think we're going spoilers open now. I think we're allowed to kind of dive deep into it. But you know, Joel's fucking dead, so they're not gonna explore that story unless it's surprise, motherfucker.
Oh man.
Unless there's some kind of prequel, they're not gonna dive into that story anymore. And Ellie, by the time her story ends, you know, like, here's my thing. Last of Us Part 2 ends in such a fucking downer place, right? It is so heartbreaking. It like tears your heart out. Like Dina has left Ellie, took the child with her, right? Like everybody she knows is dead. Ellie's like, she finishes that game walking back to
She's a ghost.
Jackson.
She's basically a ghost of herself.
Yeah, she's basically a ghost of herself, right? Like she's kind of empty. She's she's trying to play that song on the guitar, and like she can't play it right because she's lost her fingers. It is such a fucking heartbreaking end to a game, and I could see there being okay, but let's bring it back, right? Let's add the heart back into The Last of Us, because Last of Us 1 starts off with, like, I think a lot of heart, right? It's violent, it's dark, but also it's a game that I would say is about reconnection, and it's a game about regaining your humanity. Last of Us Part 2 is such a game about losing your humanity and leaning into revenge, and it is about the cycle of violence, and it is fucking Empire Strikes Back level of like, oh, this fucking sucks. This is dark. This is gritty. I think the natural progression of that trilogy would be to bring it back and have it be a story of Ellie regaining her humanity in the way that Joel in Last of Us 1 had to kind of regain his humanity through Ellie. I think if you're going to continue with the Ellie story, that's where you would take it. Otherwise, I could also see them putting down the Ellie story, because like
I think her story is unfinished. Like, I was really thinking about it this morning of the way, like you're saying, Bless, it does really feel like that downer Empire Strikes Back almost cliffhanger of like, yeah, it's really sad, and like The Last of Us, the original, it ends in a way where it's like, yeah, I could see this ending here, but they leave so much open to be like, yeah, like there should be more here, because it does it, even though in this moment it feels finished and the story feels finished, Ellie's journey is not finished. I believe in ways Abby's story is not finished, and then especially Lev, right? Is his name. I think on the Lost Legacy, or like maybe an in between of Left Behind and Lost Legacy, you get more Lev backstory and more of where Lev has come from, because I think one of the perfect ways to bring to transition into what we want from Part 3, I think the perfect way to tie it all together, because that's what you need to do in a Part 3 of a trilogy, right, is your two kind of, you know, in The Last of Us 1, you've got Joel and Ellie, and Last of Us Part 2, you know, you're kind of bouncing back and forth, but then your kind of big duo in that game, I would say, is Abby and Lev. And then in Part 3, you have both of the younger characters from both Part 1 and Part 2 cross paths again, and it's Ellie and Lev.
Interesting.
I'm glad you're here, Barrett, because I'm gonna spit something out real quick, and I'm glad definitely.
Spit it out.
Spit it out.
Okay, hear me out. Hear me out. We could all agree Last of Us universe is great. You talk about Joel and Ellie, how we're kind of like getting a little bit juiced out on it. This reminds me totally of Breaking Bad. Okay, Walter and Jesse Pinkman, same kind of thing. We had this whole journey with them throughout the entire thing of Breaking Bad. We had the movie El Camino as well, right? To be the bookend of that entire thing. And then they said, we are going to bring Better Call Saul, an entirely different character. It is a prequel that basically flourishes what happens in Breaking Bad. Barrett, is there a world that they go back into a prequel setting that makes the Last of Us story, elevates it just a little bit more, and maybe in some cases maybe better than the original? Because I love
there's only one way, I think, and I think that's Ellie's mom. I think you explore that character.
Yeah, Ellie's mom, I think, in the new context of like building up like even more of like her characters in ways, and you know, playing that as a prequel and learning more about her, and then when you go back to Last of Us 1 and 2, you're like, oh my god, she's so much like her mother and stuff like that. And again, to bring it back to how Part 2 ends and why I think Ellie's story is unfinished is like where we leave, and to tie it into Breaking Bad, where we leave Ellie off in Part 2 feels like if Breaking Bad had ended with Ozymandias. Sancho, if you
Yes.
understand that, where we don't get, if those last 3 episodes didn't come out and we just get Walter kind of escaping off into the sunset, and we don't get any of the him hiding out, him coming back to Albuquerque, stuff like that. So that's why I think Ellie's story is unfinished and they'll return to her at some point.
What a great show, bro.
I gotta feel. I'm halfway through, maybe a little bit most of the way through now. Better Call Saul, and goddamn, I can't stop watching this thing. Even though I will take a break once I finish the season. I'm on season 4. Once I finish season 4, I'm taking a little bit of a break.
You're gonna need a little bit of a break.
Yeah, you do.
Oh, you think so? Okay, I can't wait to finish.
Yeah.
I want to bring in a question from my dog Nick96 from Massachusetts, who writes in with a long write-in. It's a long multi-part write-in, so I'm going to only take it part by part. But he writes in and says, "Hello, Bless and Sancho. For The Last of Us, the obvious answer of what I want is The Last of Us Part 3, a conclusion to Ellie's story. Another story I would like to see is a prequel to Part 2 around Yara and Lev. Something Lost Legacy sized sounds fitting, but I wouldn't mind if this is a comic either." And this is kind of what we're talking about. And of course, as a reminder, right, Yara, I believe, is Lev's older sister, or at least like older caretaker. I think it was sister though. The other prequel I want to see is about Ellie's mother, Anna. This may be something we see in Part 3 though. There was that artwork of that pregnant woman with the gas mask and the title American Daughters. That could have alluded to her. I think all this is interesting. It's related to all the things that we're talking about. One of the things, going back to the idea of Part 3 being Ellie's story once again, is like, what is the story? I know like what the feels have to be. I know what the themes have to be in terms of, again, like reconnecting to humanity, right? Regaining your humanity, finding something to kind of, I guess, give Ellie hope in being a human being again. But how do they do that, right? Do they do that by bringing back in Abby and Lev?
No, I think you could totally do that without them. I think Ellie, when we last leave her, she's a ghost, and I think like Joel was a ghost as well. He was a hardened man, and he needed to open up. It'd be interesting to see her just be nomadic, man, going town to town, experiencing these little tableaus of her. Like, she kind of reminds me of like the Seven Samurai. You know, she's just this really good killer. You know, she could handle her own. She could kill humans. She could kill clickers. She's seen it all and bloaters. Like, she's not afraid of anything, right? So she could be as of a like a silent type, not like quiet, but like this presence, you know. And I would be really cool if she just stumbled upon a village or some kind of encampment and she helps them. Because we all have seen that in like movie cinema, right? This person, like kind of like the Book of Eli, that type of beat, right? I think that she would be an amazing character like that, and we already know everything about her. We don't need to see her discover new things. It's more of like just her waking up from this nightmare that she gave herself because she was so stubborn. But I think that would be the story of it. But that would be more of a story that kind of like, you know, how we didn't need El Camino. There was a lot of people, I know I'm bringing up Breaking Bad here, but a lot of people didn't need to see the very end of like how some characters ended up. I mean, we were happy with where Pinkman was at the end of Breaking Bad. We didn't see anything more, so it could be like maybe we don't need to see more about it.
I would push back against that, but
I know, but maybe we
needed El Camino.
I don't. Maybe we don't need to see where Ellie goes. I mean, because in that in itself, she's a tragic character already, and we don't need to. Maybe she doesn't deserve a comeback. Like, honestly, dude, when Joel got his head beaten in by the golf club, I was like, yeah, dude, Joel's a bad dude as well. Like, I get it. We all love him, and he's, you know, that was the whole point of the story. Like, he's not black and white, he's gray, and it sucks that he died, but you should feel this way for everybody that dies in the Last of Us because it's the same kind of result.
Everybody's like on the same playing field to some extent. You know, some are more evil than others, but like everybody's some shade of gray in the Last
they're all shade, and Ellie becomes gray right at the very end. So it's like
she becomes dark gray for sure.
So it's like she's not a good person either. She had a chance to walk away, to live her life with Dina, and she gave that up, dude. So it's like, does she deserve this inning? You know,
Sancho,
she already got one.
Gabe Papadakis Hewitt writes into Patreon. And
These
says,
great names,
awesome names. And we mentioned this on the post show, but it was during the post show, so you might have missed it. Gabe Papadakis, is that a 8 Mile reference? Gabe, let us know because I'm very curious. I want to know if that's an 8 Mile thing. He says, I would be okay with the Last of Us multiplayer game being the last of Us thing we get. I like the end of The Last of Us 2. I like that the end of The Last of Us 2 was open to interpretation, and it's hard for me to imagine continuing that story. Sure, you could explore other people's stories in that universe, but how much, quote, humans are the real enemy, end quote, can we get before we travel into the Walking Dead TV show territory, which
That's
maybe
true.
has gone too long. I think that's fascinating, right?
That
The
is
idea
good.
of The Last of Us Part 2 just being it in terms of I would say the Joel and Ellie story, and maybe the rest of the stories are just told through the Last of Us factions multiplayer. I could go either way with it. I could use more Last of Us Part 3 in the conversation that like we're having with Barrett in terms of no, there's more for that character to be told, right? Like I could see them exploring that character more. At the same time, man, after The Last of Us Part 2, I'm a little bit burnt out. Like Last of Us Part 2 took so much out of me, out of that story.
That's because like Empire was dark, but then you had Return of the Jedi, which was moments dark, but then also like combined the campiness of the first one to make like a combination of the first two. Where so like if we get a Part 3, I don't think it would be as exhausting as Part 2, because Part 2 is supposed to be the like really dark and gritty, and then Part 3 can bring it all together and have some hope at the end.
Well, I think it's just we're fatigued because right now we're getting a full like force push Last of Us right now. Like it's hitting us on all sides. It's in our face with the HBO show. It's hitting us with the rebuild. It's hitting us. It is relentless. But it's been a while since we've had a game like a brand new experience from Naughty Dog with The Last of Us. In terms of The Last of Us Part 2 came out years ago now, right? So I think it's just more of like your eyes are just are fatigued by it, but I think your hands are willing to play another one, right? I am definitely willing to play another Last of Us Part 3, but I think what it is like, I think we're underplaying what that multiplayer game can be, right? There is no limit to what Naughty Dog could do with that. If Naughty Dog would say, we're going to release a Joel or a prequel Joel or like an Ellie campaign where Ellie's an NPC and she's guiding you around with you, like you get to be you, the character you create, and you get to play with Ellie. Like that's what I'm saying, dude.
I feel like that is getting into dangerous territory.
That's theme park writing kind of stuff that I don't think Naughty Dog wants to kind of.
I want to be on that ride though.
For me, because that takes me to GTA Online, because GTA Online does that. Where you do campaign missions from Lamar, you do them from, I always forget his name, but the nerdy dude with the glasses. Helps you play in the heist. Recently, they added in missions with Franklin, where they added in Dr. Dre, and you're working for Franklin and Dr. Dre doing shit. But GTA 5, goofy ass video game, goofy ass story, goofy ass online. We're down with it. We're fine with it. I think Naughty Dog is so precious about those characters that I could not see them being like, okay, now we're gonna make Ellie a mission giver, and like I think it could be done with the most quality in the world. I think they could knock it out of the park. I do think that would still end up with the character feeling a little bit cheapened, right? Because I think we associate Joel and Ellie so much with, okay, if I'm getting their story, I am getting it through these very specific means, right? Like though that is like the peak of your storytelling. I guess war chest as Naughty Dog, right? Keep that for your single player campaigns, and then like for the factions, I would say like have it be new people. I do think if you're gonna pull in mission givers from the core Last of Us campaign, it would be, what was the name of the dude that got Dina pregnant? I think Jesse. I think he could be a mission giver.
Camera guy was
I think that is your pull for mission givers for factions, and I think that keeps it interesting, right? I think people would maybe like that, right? Or maybe even like if you're trying to go crazy, have Dina be a mission giver. Maybe, I don't know. That might be a step too far, but I think that caliber, maybe Tommy. I think Tommy would make sense. Maybe if you have something that is the collaboration with Jackson, right? Or the crossover with Jackson.
That'd be cool.
Maybe you do something along those lines and have it take place before Joel even gets there.
You need something for the single player people. Like, why should I play this, right? Why should I play this? Should it be like maybe I get a little bit more like Left Behind type experience? Maybe I get to explore the bar, a different part of the bar in that saloon. You know what I mean? Like,
you gotta remember, you
gotta give something.
We're playing fast and loose with like locations and stuff. Like
we're mad loose.
You have to remember like the concept art that they gave us for when they talked about factions last. That is San Francisco. So like you have to also think about like who realistically is over there. Again, without it being theme parky of like, let's throw Ellie in here for what reason? Fuck you. You're just gonna enjoy it. Kind of thing,
but I do think over the years, I think they expanded though. I think we're gonna get outside of SF eventually. I don't think we're gonna travel there necessarily. Maybe they could fake it. I don't know. I think it will be a SF is probably your main hub where you start off, but then in year 5 of Last of Us Factions, we're finding ourselves in, I don't know, New York or like Miami or like just other fucking random locations
Vice
via
City.
Vice City, right? It'll be via loading screen. We're not, or maybe like maybe the loading screen is you sitting in a bus like Spider-Man, like how they do those fast travels.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think that's a good point though. That like, what is happening in San Francisco? That's also what I want to know. You know, like,
dude.
last Seattle was so defined in terms of you have the WLF, right, the Washington Liberation Force. You have the Seraphites, the Scars. You have them.
The
you
Wolf
have
as
like
well. Yeah, Wolf.
The which one of the the Wolves are the WLF.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have these different factions. I want to know what the factions are in San Francisco. Right?
It's true. I would love that.
The techies and the locals.
I was trying to think. I was like, yeah, it's gonna be the tech bros. It's gonna be the locals.
The gentrifiers.
Dude, it's gonna be so interesting. But what makes me laugh is Barrett saying theme parky, because I could be like, Joel's like, hey, it's good to see you. We need some help today. We're gonna need you to get some supplies.
Exactly,
like a Universal.
It's like Buzz
I'll see you later.
Talking to me while I'm about to go on his ride. You know.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, dude, I like, if we're gonna put a button on this whole thing, it's just like Naughty Dog could do a lot, and they in terms of they could go in any direction, and I think I agree with Barrett. It needs a third one because it just makes sense to I mean, the money's there. It's like a fight that you want to see again. Speaking of Rocky and Review, right? We want to see this prize fight one more time, this last ride for Ellie. I mean, like in every kind of show, right? In a bad, like if you're the bad guy, either you go to jail or you die, right? That's the only ends that you have here. Same thing like in like Sopranos. That's what happens, right? But for Ellie, we need to maybe that was what she experienced, dude. Part 2, she's dead. Like emotionally, she's dead. That's it, and that's her end. So maybe that's what Naughty Dog's saying. Like the story's over. But I just think there's just too much, especially with the show coming out. There's just too much cash to ignore the possibility of a 3.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk a little bit more about Last of Us a little bit later in the show, specifically the HBO show. So get prepped for that. For now, though, let me tell you about patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames, where you can go and get the show ad free. And speaking of ads, let us tell you about our sponsors.
This episode is brought to you by MeUndies. Of course, I'm Tim Geddes. I love MeUndies. It is very rare, if ever, that you'll see me not wearing MeUndies head to toe. I'm wearing the MeUndies shirt. I'm wearing the MeUndies lounge shorts. I'm wearing the MeUndies socks. I'm wearing the MeUndies undies. Of course I am. Everyone knows MeUndies for their super soft undies and comfy bralettes, but did you know that they make other stuff too? They have daily tees, shorts, rompers that add a little silky softness to your everyday. They even make hoodies for your dog. You know that Toretto and Moose be rocking those as well. MeUndies is your destination for all things soft and sustainable. For any first-time purchasers, you get 20% off plus free shipping and returns. To get 20% off your first order, free shipping, and 100% satisfaction guarantee, go to MeUndies.com/KindaFunny. That's MeUndies.com/KindaFunny. You're not going to regret it. You're going to love MeUndies, just like I do. MeUndies.com/KindaFunny.
Sancho, it's time to talk about this week in PlayStation. Let's start off talking about how the PS5 is about to get more expensive. I am reading from Rebecca Valentine at IGN. Today, on the PlayStation blog, Sony announced that it will be raising the price of both editions of the PS5 in Europe, the UK, the Middle East, Africa, Asia, Latin America, and Canada. The United States seems to be the only major market not getting a price increase. Quote, the global economic environment is a challenge that many of you around the world are no doubt experiencing, the blog post states. Quote, we're seeing high global inflation rates as well as adverse currency trends impacting consumers and creating pressure on many industries, end quote. The price increases are as follows, and I boiled down to just Europe, UK, and Japan. Of course, go to PS Blog, get the actual details on that and what all the different price hikes look like in all the different major territories. In Europe, the PS5 with a disc drive is going up to €549.99. That is up from €499.99. And then the digital is going up to $449, or sorry, let me say that again. It's going up 449 euros 99, up from 399 euros 99. In UK, the disc drive is going up to 479 euro. I'm just gonna round up. 480 pounds. That is up from 450 pounds. The digital edition is going up to 390 pounds. And then in Japan, the disc drive is going to 54,980 yen. That is up from 49,980 yen. The digital going up to 44,980 yen, up from 39,980 yen. Sancho, I'm sure you saw this break this morning on Twitter.
Wait, hold on, really quick. I think you're
up?
just talking Japan, right? Because I think that's up to the Blu-ray disc is up to 60.4 or something like that. I've got the PlayStation blog up here.
Oh, interesting. I copied and pasted from IGN, so that might be.
Yeah, and then the PS5 digital edition is 49,000 yen, roughly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that 49. Oh, okay. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know what that change was, but there you go. Yeah, the PlayStation blog numbers are going to be the more correct ones here. But yeah, Sancho, I'm sure you saw this break this morning on Twitter. It practically broke Twitter when it happened. What is your response to it?
I mean, it's just the way of the world, man. It's a bummer. It feels like it's a fallout from everything that we've been experiencing for the past couple of years. And it's not just happening to gaming, dude. It's happening everywhere in all facets of life. You're out there ordering your Chipotle, and then all of a sudden this Chipotle is like around $20. You're like, well, what happened? Like the thing about it more than ever is just like PlayStation, video game consoles around the world have always been much more expensive than they have been in America. I mean, I remember when I was working at Circuit City back in the day, it's like you looking at the Brazilian prices for these consoles, it's been astronomical compared to here in the States. You have people buying consoles here and then going back over there, and then it's just a mess. I just think like Sony's trying to get ahead of it when it comes to this is what it is before people make their own articles about it. Like, whoa, look at this. PlayStation is doing this behind everybody. But it's just, what are you going to do, man? I mean, it's just not a good look for PlayStation considering everyone's already talking about the $70 game price update. And it's just making look like Microsoft is just sitting there like, yeah, right, man, another win for us here.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that broke since we talked about it earlier this morning on KHD, right? Is that Microsoft came out with the response and they're like, hey, no, we're not raising up the price of the Xbox. And
it's such like a Cold War type like battle that we're having between PlayStation and Xbox. It's not robust type of releases or features or like, you know what I mean? Like the way it used to be versus Sega and Nintendo. They used to be like this big, like, it's like behind closed doors and all these little itty bitty tit for tat moves that everybody's doing right now. It's crazy.
Yeah, and like that as a response from Xbox is kind of like, oh goddamn! All right, well, what is that going to do for value? Because that was the first thing that hopped out to me when it came to this. Right? Okay, not only are PS5s hard to get, but now in most major markets they're going to be more expensive. Could they get more expensive in the US? Who knows? Like at this point, I don't know, right? That could happen in the future. But for now, even with that, we're already having the conversations around $70 games, and games are getting more expensive. And even games that you wouldn't expect to hit that $70 mark, like Last of Us Part 1, those are hitting that mark, let alone like PlayStation Plus, Extra and Premium trying to be these, like, hey, here's subscription services where you can get these games, right? And they're not day and date, but they are collections of games, right? You take all of that and compare it to Xbox, right? To be frank, Xbox, they're keeping that price. They got Xbox Game Pass. First party games are coming to that, right? They're also on PC as well, right? There's Game Pass PC as well. The value battle is one that I think PlayStation is struggling with a bit, and I think that comes back to a bit of like, I forget it was Jim Ryan or Herman Hulse. It was probably Jim Ryan because it was not a great quote, but it was him talking about like, oh yeah, these games are expensive because we want to keep making them, right? Like PlayStation games have high budget. PlayStation game, like we can't put them on other consoles because we want to make sure we're putting in all the resources. There is that kind of sentiment around PlayStation, and to some extent, I think we're able to fly by it because we get the God of War Ragnarok, or let's say we get the God of Wars. We don't know if Ragnarok's going to be good, even though it's probably going to be good. We get the Last of Us's of the world. We get the Horizons of the world, right? We get these high quality, big budget games that satiate the audience that aren't fucking up that relationship yet from the quality standpoint. And so I think a lot of people are putting up with it, but I think that's the one thing, that's like the one string that's kind of keeping us along here.
Right. It's okay. Just to keep it in kind of funny house. I mean, we're doing Rocky Review, and this reminds me of Rocky 3. Okay. Apollo's talking to Stallone is like, dude, you don't have the eye of the tiger anymore. Microsoft right now is hungry and it has the eye of the tiger. It is literally fighting from the bottom for the first time in a while. Right now, PlayStation, what they could easily do is when a business is like this, what does the business offer, Blessing? They offer something for free, something that they know they could lose software-wise.
We're talking about PlayStation
I
here,
know,
Sancho.
but give me something. Give me a free game. Give me a free, I don't
Or
know,
like-
a free cover.
bundle in shit
Bundle
with
it,
the
yeah.
with the more expensive consoles, right? Bundle in
Bundle it
PlayStation
in.
Plus Premium for
Bundle
6
it
months.
in.
Bundle
Throw
in a
it
video
big
game.
guy. Toss a bone, brother. Like, I know we're gonna this because back in the day
Sancho,
you would.
but think of the CEOs and
I know.
executives who need to be paid, Sancho.
You
Think of Jim Ryan's
Think
cat.
of how much they're gonna lose, Sancho.
The eye of the tiger, okay? You're losing the eye of the tiger.
Which is insane to me because, like, the parent companies, right? Microsoft, I imagine, is much more successful than Sony is as a company, and it's just weird to me that, like, Microsoft is the company with the eye of the tiger. They're the corporate underdog.
It's Phil Spencer, man. Phil Spencer is like he's in that desk.
Yeah.
He's like dressed up as Rocky. He's got the boxing gloves.
He's
tied in
Clubber
with them.
Lane, dude. He's going in, dude. But that's the thing about it is like you have the ability to kind of soften the blow a little bit, okay? But like, we understand this happens, but we're gonna look in, like, at least say we're gonna look into it. I mean, realistically, may not happen, but you still have Sony. You could throw in a movie. I don't care. Throw in something,
Throw
dude.
in Spider-Man 3.
Throw in something. Throw in a collection. I don't care. Just soften the blow a little bit to make it feel like I understand. Here's a free chips and salsa. Just do something like that.
Well, something that they're doing that I think is really exciting is the Dualsense Edge. Of course, this was announced back during Gamescom opening night live. I'm going to pull from Tom Warren at The Verge, who has an article about it. Sony has just announced a new Dualsense Edge wireless controller. The quote, high-performance controller is fully customizable, much like the Xbox Elite controller. Sony appears to have the best features from the SCUF and Elite controllers, with removable analog thumbsticks, rear buttons, changeable stick caps, and multiple control profiles. The Dualsense Edge allows owners to change out stick caps for 3 types: standard, high dome, and low dome. There are also 2 swappable back buttons, a half dome or lever, that can be mapped to any other buttons, much like typical paddles. Much like other customizable controllers, you can save multiple control profiles, which is ideal when you're switching games regularly. Sony has even added an on-controller interface with a dedicated function button that lets you quickly switch between profiles, adjust volume and chat balance, and access profile settings to tweak the controller during a game. Sony has only teased the DualSense Edge controller during Gamescom opening night live, and there is no confirmed release date or pricing yet. Sancho, are you excited to use the DualSense Edge?
Listen, I was looking for. I have hordes of controllers. Okay, so I have a whole bunch now. I am excited. About time. Thank God. Like, there's nothing more frustrating as a controller player that likes to play with extra buttons, because paddles are the future. If you never play with a paddle controller out there, audience, you need to, because you're gonna just be a better gamer. But so there's a lot of third-party companies that they talked about, right? SCUF and things like that. So here in my hand is formed from Clinch Gaming. Now, as you can see at the very back of it, there's these little buttons, right, that allow you to have the paddle thing. It's still a great controller. I'm not a fan of how small they are, but at the same time, there are different kinds of third parties. Now, I have my Elite controller somewhere around here, but this is the one from Thrustmaster. Okay, Thrustmaster has this thing where you could kind of move the paddles and you can make this parallel, things like that, and it has the back buttons as well, right? I'm a big fan of that versus the paddles. So the thing about it is that with the games that are coming out, the multiplayer games and things of that sort, even to help abled gamers as well, you have the ability. This is fantastic, and I love the future of that. I think they need to lean more into the customization of it. Sure, if you're going to take a page from the Xbox Elite, which I don't know where it is, but it's here somewhere. I have so many. So the Xbox Elite, I think, is a great controller. The thumbsticks themselves are really rigid and tough. I like this control. Like, the DualSense controller itself feels fantastic, especially playing games like Multiverses. I just like the short sticks. I love the ability to customize. I think, like, for PlayStation to say we're finally getting into it, it just shows you that they're finally listening to what we want. Because as much as I like the Clinch Gaming people, they're fantastic. If this thing breaks, I have to send it off, and it's going to be weeks before I could get another one. But if I could just pop into a Best Buy, pop into your local game store and buy another PlayStation controller, I'm in for it. I used to have the C40 controller. The C40 is from, oh my God, who makes the A40s, those headsets?
Oh, Astro?
Astro. Okay,
Yeah.
this Astro gaming controller, one of the best controllers, very expensive, over $250, right? Yes, I know. It's very expensive, Sancho. Yes, I know. I understand. But that controller was awesome, but they stopped making them and went discontinued, and I still have a whole bunch of ones. But dude, this is awesome. I'm excited. I think it's going to be quickly adopted by a lot of people and gamers out there. And if you're like, why should I spend that much money on a controller, which we don't know, they haven't announced the price or anything. I'm assuming it's going to be around $200+.
Yeah. I mean, at this way, it's $700 and your first child.
Right. Know that it's worth investing. I think it's 100% worth investing. These, I know I mentioned the C40 didn't last me that long, but it is worth investing in your controllers. If you talk to anyone like the Nitro Rifle, he will tell you that it's worth investing as well. But it's good to have first party for the first time, because we had a scuff third-party controller for PlayStation.
That's what I got.
That one's okay. What do you feel about that controller, Blessing? Because as someone that has bought these custom controllers, what do you think about that scuff one right there? I mean, it looks cool. I vibe with it, but I just didn't like the paddles too much.
So the paddles are what throw me off.
Exactly.
I'm somebody I'm a new adopter when it comes to any sort of like elite type of controller. And honestly, my first experience with something with paddles was actually the Steam Deck, and I like the Steam Deck with the paddles because I'm not accidentally pressing them, right? Like they're firm enough.
They feel great. They're big too.
Yeah, they're big. They feel great. Like they're clicky, but like I wouldn't accidentally hit them. This thing, I'm accidentally pressing the paddles.
100%.
That's my biggest issue with it. Is for a lot of
100%.
games, especially for me not being used to using a controller like this. If I'm playing a fighting game or if I'm playing a game where I have the fast twitch reflexes, it's just such a weird adjustment to like have that soft touch to not actually hit these things. And so that's been my big issue with it. And that's why I genuinely don't play with it, because I think the paddles are a bit bulky and they kind of get in the way.
Now, those are paddles, but the Dualsense Edge has back buttons, which are so much better in my mind. And the thing about the Elite controller, they have paddles, but they get spongy because for those who don't know, the paddle goes into a hole that has a button inside as if you're going to reset the controller. And the more aggressive you are with your paddles over time, it just gets spongy and becomes like a dead paddle. So I'm happy that it's a button, because clicking a button like the Steam Deck, which I have as well, it's great. I think it, like I mentioned, it just because the way the complexity of video games is happening, like even Rumbleverse, to be able to do a double trigger pull for a dodge, it's so much nicer to have it bound to one button and you just press it with the one button press. So I think it's great. It just feels like it's a long overdue process. I'm hoping that they get the customization in terms of the faceplates and all that kind of excitement that makes
that's the stuff that I want. Like that's the stuff that I think would make me pop, is if they did like a what's called design labs type thing for PlayStation DualSense controllers. You know, we've been asking that for such a long time. We wanted it with the DualShock 4. I think the DualSense being as sleek as it is and like seeing it come in the different colors, I would love to be able to, customize like the outside areas and the touchpad a different color, and actually add colors to the buttons and stuff like that. I think that'd be fun.
There's some good stuff in there. And one thing I want to highlight before we move on is that I like the ability to have profiles. I think the Thrustmaster controller I have has the same thing. It's fantastic to say, I'm going to play Fortnite and then I'm switch over to Rumbleverse controllers. It's really good.
And that's the kind of stuff that helps with, like, if you're playing a fighting game and you don't want to use the back buttons, right? That's like a profile that you can make to disable those for that game specifically and stuff like that. So yeah, that's a cool thing.
It's a good pull.
Well, let's talk a bit about Sony's film and TV pursuits, because they're heating up. But my question for you, Sancho, is it going too far? This last week, we got tons of announcements. Let's start off with Last of Us HBO. That got a teaser. Reading from Adam Bankhurst at IGN, HBO has revealed the first teaser for the upcoming TV series adaptation of The Last of Us, and it features Pedro Pascal's Joel, Bella Ramsey's Ellie, and more. Alongside Joel and Ellie, the short tease also gave us a glimpse at Joel's daughter Sarah, who's played by Nico Parker, and Bill, who's played by played by Nick Offerman, a clicker stuck in a wall, and potentially Frank, who could be played by Murray Bartlett. Of course, Frank being Bill's partner, who never really showed up as a voice role in Last of Us, but you saw dead, basically, when you
Right.
finally find him.
Because I don't see them in this teaser at all.
You know what? I didn't see him either, and so I was trusting
it's-
IGN.
Maybe
Maybe frame by frame.
Maybe this isn't Pedro Pascal, which is what I'm assuming here. But
No,
that's the
looks
only
like
other
Pedro.
person where I'm like, I think it's just that. So I don't know where they're getting Frank from.
Yeah,
is my
maybe
thing.
see if you can keyframe, because I was curious about this. I never went back and looked for Frank, because like I don't know.
I'll
Who that is.
keyframe it on my end. You keep talking. If I find anything, I'll let you know.
Yeah. The article continues. We still have an official release date for The Last of Us on HBO, but we know it'll arrive in 2023. Now, that's not all, because Sony is also reportedly making a Days Gone movie. This comes from Igor at Engadget.
Give it to me.
Days Gone may never get a proper sequel, but its post-apocalyptic story could eventually make its way to the silver screen. According to Deadline, Sony's PlayStation Productions unit is developing a film adaptation of the 2019 game. Outlander actor Sam Heughan is reportedly set to star in a script penned by Up in the Air and X-Men First Class writer Sheldon Turner. Deadline reports Turner envisions the final film being a, quote, love ballad to motorcycle movies, end quote. Now, that's not all. Sony is also making a Gravity Rush movie. This comes from Matt Grobar at Deadline. PlayStation Productions and Scott Free Productions have launched development on Gravity Rush, a film based on the 2012 action-adventure video game of the same name. The open-world PlayStation Vita game, developed by Japan Studios' Project Siren and published by Sony, has players controlling Kat, an amnesiac with the ability to manipulate gravity, who uses her powers to defend the floating community of Hexaville from gravity storms and the mysterious race of monsters known as the Nevi or Nevi. I still haven't figured that one out. Now, that is not all, Sancho. Somehow, this morning, Netflix tweeted out how The Umbrella Academy is wrapping up with its fourth and final season. The lead producer director role for Umbrella Academy is now working on developing Horizon Zero Dawn for Netflix, so you can expect that too. And let alone, listen, Sancho, I can keep going, all right? If you want to get out of PlayStation, fucking Sega is out there making Space Channel 5 and Comic Zone movies. And apparently, I just speaked on Twitter and somebody said something about BioShock being developed as a fucking film or movie.
Yeah,
I don't know which.
over on Netflix. What was that? I sent that to KFGD, and it's really cool too because it's the director behind I Am Legend and The Hunger Games: Catching Fire, and then the scriptwriter wrote Logan, Blade Runner 2049, and American Gods. So BioShock has got a good team behind it now too.
Okay.
Oh, that's pretty fun.
Like because they announced BioShock, I think a bit ago, and it was like, oh god, Netflix making BioShock great. But now that they've got these guys attached, I'm like, okay.
This might be fire. Sancho, have we gone too far?
No, listen, we are entering the era of video game media. It's gonna be full throttle. They've already exhausted the majority of the comic books. I mean, they're already done MCU, DC's doing its thing, right? There's not much on that front. So what's the next fruit tree to pick at? It's video games. They've done it in the past. They haven't nailed it just yet. You know, this is it. This is exciting. Okay, Last of Us movie, boom. Last of Us series, yes. HBO, fantastic. We're talking about the best of the best when it comes to episodic television right now, minus the AMC people at Breaking Bad. But this is what I'm talking about. Gets me excited. Listen, we got to talk about that Last of Us thing. You don't know what loss is. And Pedro Pascal nails that line, dude. He nails that line. And everyone was so wondering, everyone was concerned that Pedro Pascal wouldn't be a good Joel because just basically, I mean, it's not who they had in mind, right? For the longest time, it was like Josh Brolin. You had Hugh Jackman, right? Everyone was speculating. It's always a fun video to make, and you guys did as well for casting people. But Pedro Pascal brings this gravitas to this role that he's been fantastic in Narcos. He's been fantastic in Game of Thrones as the Viper, and him in The Mandalorian. The acting that he's doing behind his mask is fantastic. And I think just to be able to see him say that line, I know it's being dissected by the internet. That should put every concern to bed. Like, seriously. Now, Bill Ramsey at the same time, I think her casting her as the in the Game of Thrones, right? She is
Lady Mormont,
Lady Mormont, right?
Yeah.
And the leader of the Bear people, right? She has it in her, and I think what just looking at her, they should have gave her a moment too to let everyone know, like, hey, she's good. but I think she captures the youth and innocence that Ellie as a video game character never really captured because it's a video game. But if you look at her, you're like, that's just a little girl out there, and she's about to go down some serious dark roads, right? So that's what gets me excited about the whole entire thing. Now, going to Days Gone, the Sam dude from Outlander, that guy's a dope actor. Very dreamy, very great action star in the making. So I'm excited for that. Gravity Rush, just give it to me, dude. You got Studio Ghibli type vibes. That's going to be an awesome type beat. Blessing, just embrace it, dude. Just embrace.
I want to. And listen,
you got to.
Because what? There's nothing to lose here. At worst, we get some bad TVs and movies. Right?
Worst,
at best, we get some
Dead
great
or
stuff.
Alive. Remember that movie? We get that with Kevin Nash in it. We get that. We get that.
I'm trying to embrace it. I'm just trying to understand the strategy here because I like Last of Us. That makes sense. Ghost Streamer, that makes sense. Horizon, that makes sense. A Gravity Rush.
I saw you tweet that out.
Listen to me this isn't me as a hater of Gravity Rush specifically. I might be a Days Gone hater. I want to play Gravity Rush. I have Gravity Rush legit downloaded. So once I get some free time, I think I'm gonna get into Gravity Rush. I got a lot of curiosity about that, and I like how different that is as a project compared to the other things. And also, on that note, I got requests. If you're out here making Japan studio projects, make me a Shadow of Colossus movie or an Eco movie or a Last Guardian movie, right?
Yes.
Get into that area. I think that'd be fire.
Give it.
But it is a lot. It's a lot of projects announced within like a short period where I'm like, oh, do y'all not want to see? Like, I don't know, man. Like, learn about the feelings of one before you move into the other. Like, maybe ease into it a little bit. Them like going full fledged shotgun approach. Boom, pow. We're like fucking making everything now. I think that's the one thing that has me like, all right, man. I will see. But the Uncharted movie was fine. It was cool.
Yeah,
it was fun.
Yeah, it was.
So if we're getting more of those, that's fine.
Yeah, dude, it's a light romp. It's whatever. I know people have problems with Mark Wahlberg, but that movie doesn't get made without Mark Wahlberg attached to it. It is what it is. But I had a great time with it. I think the thing is like now we're going into some uncharted territory with the whole thing simply because thank you. I mean, Halo is out, right? Halo, I feel, did its thing, but I don't think it was as gangbusters as people were hoping for. Now Last of Us is going to have this thing. You have them come out, and Sonic the Hedgehog's popping off, right? Sonic the Hedgehog 2 was fantastic. So he's doing his thing. Mario, the movie, is about to come down the pipe. No pun intended. is coming, right? So there is a lot of video game properties are about to hit the forefront, and I think more than ever, you're going to get some duds. And I think I feel what gets me exhausted is Resident Evil. I mean, that I had its day already, but give me a Dead Rising movie. I know it's a zombie movie, a video setting, but I want Dead Rising. I like Frank, the idea.
A Dead Rising movie directed. It would have to be directed by either what's his name, director I love, Edgar Wright, or like the person who did like Bullet Train recently. It would have to be one of those.
I
if
like
you're doing
Bullet
a Dead
Train.
Rising movie. Bullet Train's fire, isn't it?
Yeah. Are you a Diesel?
What do you mean?
Are you a Diesel?
Oh, I see. No, I'm not a Diesel. No, man, I'm a Thomas. Now, like I said earlier in the show, right? My dog Nick96 wrote in with a lengthy write-in. I touched on the first part of it. I want to touch on the last part of it. So to jump back to his question, he continues writing in and saying, next, I want to ask about the HBO show. We know there are going to be some differences from the games, but my question is, do you think we could see some story elements from part 2 hinted at earlier than in the games? Also, do you think we could see the story of Left Behind adapted, or even the prequel comic American Dreams? Last, how long do you see the show running? I don't think it's been said how much content the first season will cover, but do you think they anticipate adapting the entire series, parts 1, 2, and possibly 3? Anyway, I'm all excited for the Last of Us content to come. Have a good day. My dog, Nick96. I think it's a fascinating question, right? Because I don't know. I don't know if you tell the whole story of Last of Us Part 1 in a season. I feel like that is multiple seasons worth of content.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's rumors that it would be it includes spring as well. I mean, people were thinking that it ends with winter, when Joel takes his old man spill. Oh, clumsy Joel.
Oh, God, Joel. Clumsy Joel.
Clumsy Joel. I think if they were to hint anything about part 2 would be when they go to Jackson with Tommy. I think if Tommy is out there, who's played by Gabriel Luna, aka the Terminator, aka Ghost Rider, if that will be hinted more. You will get a little bit of the stories. I don't think they'll go that deep. There's a reason why they're remaking The Last of Us Part 1. They want to tell that story for the HBO audience so they could play the video game The Last of Us Part 1. I don't think they're going to go any further, any deeper than that, because already you're asking for a very in the media and television, Walking Dead and all the zombie movies, it's already a played out genre. So what can they do differently? And there's already been so many movies that explore this post-apocalyptic type world, that man is the worst enemy, like The Road. And there's other movies that this escape me that explore these same kind of topics, even Children of Men type of stuff, right? So movies already explored that. So I don't think they should lean into building out this vast universe so quickly. They should just stick with Joel and Ellie, because we know that works so well. Like that is a formula that they can't mess up.
And I think that's what makes Last of Us so good is that it's so contained, right?
Right.
It's
contained.
It is this character story between, two characters that grow with each other, right? It is about this relationship between Joel and Ellie, and everything else can kind of, I think, cloudy it up, especially when you're starting to introduce foreign elements, right, or new elements in terms of, oh yeah, let's link this back into Last of Us Part 2. I don't think you need to do that. I think I think Jackson might be a good opportunity, since Last of Us Part 2 loops back around and you end up in Jackson. I could see maybe if you want to plant the seeds of like, Joel, come back here, or like, some kind of building out of what Jackson looks like, and what it could look like,
even just like setting up characters who aren't like main characters, who are
like
more
Jesse
in the,
or something
in the background and stuff like that, to feed into whenever they return.
Young Jesse.
Young Jesse or
have
something.
Him be a quest giver in the show. Like, hey, go fetch the stick for me. But yeah, I think stuff like that in Jackson, and then I would think that once you're getting to the scene in St. Mary's Hospital, where Joel goes. Where Joel goes on the killing spree and all that stuff happens. I think then, like, make the connective tissue work there, I think, a little bit more seamlessly than the game, right? Like, because I don't know how far ahead they were thinking in 2013 making The Last of Us about where they're gonna go with the narrative of Last of Us Part 2. So it was for sure retconned about like Abby's dad is actually the fucking doctor that you killed in Last of Us 1, and like young Abby Miller is gonna remember this shit, right? I don't think they were thinking that far ahead. I think making that more of a natural transition of having that person played by the same person at the very least as the doctor in the future, I think that would make sense. And then maybe if you do want to plant the seeds of somebody says the name Abby, or there's some kind of reference of there's more people here at the end of that, I think that could make sense.
I just looked up a couple movies. If you want to watch something that kind of has a vibe already, It Comes at Night. It's a great movie that has this thing where they're secluded in the forest and there's like people are dying everywhere type of stuff. And then the other movie, I know we could talk about, The Quiet Place. That's kind of like the same thing. They're not as aggressive. I mean, The Quiet Place is like Last of Us on grounded times 1,000, because you make a peep, you're dead. But those are the kind of movies that you can explore. Mainly It Comes at Night, because it really does feel like the character that's the main character. That one is like has a Joel type vibe about him. But no, I would groan and be like, if they were like, yeah, there's people out there, wolves in Seattle, I'd be like, oh.
Yeah, no, I would groan if it was too early. If it was toward like the final episodes or like a post-credit scene or some shit like that, I think it can make more sense. Like, to start teasing in the next season. And
I would have to say this: Gustavo's music's gonna be so good in that show. It's gonna be so good in that, dude. I cannot wait, dude. The theme song. I can't. I would do it. My question is, do they create their own theme? Like, do they? Because like Uncharted, the movie would have been 1,000 times better if they just leaned into that score, like Nathan Drake's score.
That's where they fucked up. Yeah, they didn't keep that Uncharted score. If they make a new theme for the Last of Us show, I'm gonna have some beef. I think you keep the main video game theme as like probably the opening theme, and you have it interpolate throughout the series. If you want to give me a different credits, like have Gustavo make something new for the credits or for like other moments, sure, why not? But you better have that Last of Us theme in there, or we'll have some words. Let me tell you, Neil Druckmann.
Oh, I think it has a Cordyceps intro too. It kind of has. It has to match the game a little bit, maybe. I don't know. We'll
100%.
We'll see.
We'll see. Let's round out PlayStation updates by talking about our current hype levels for PSVR 2. Earlier this week, it was announced that PSVR 2 is going to release in early 2023. From Matt Kim at IGN, PSVR 2, PlayStation's next-gen VR headset will be coming sometime in early 2023. According to multiple PlayStation social media sites across Twitter and Instagram, the next-gen PlayStation VR headset has locked in a release window sometime in the early months of next year. The window was confirmed on PlayStation's official Instagram account, as well as numerous PlayStation regional Twitter accounts from France and Brazil. It was also noted by Nibel on Twitter. The Resident Evil Twitter account was tweeting about how Resident Evil Village VR is going to be playable at Tokyo Game Show, and that will include PlayStation VR 2, like stations where you can play them, right? So people will have actual hands-on on PSVR 2 around that time. But Sancho, for you, like, does PSVR 2 get you excited early 2023?
I mean, dude, I haven't played my VR headset since like the beginning, man. It was like a gimmick thing to me. Like my parents would come over, like, check it out, throw yourself in a shark cage. I think like the problem is like Resident Evil 7 was so tough for me to play. Like I got a lot of motion sickness because it's like, you know, like do, and then a monster will come out of nowhere and you just run with your head off and then you go, but I don't know, man. I feel like I'm not there yet as that kind of gamer that wants to play VR. I'm just, maybe it's because I'm a parent. I don't like being immersed and not knowing what's happening in my house. But I just think that for me, PlayStation VR and VR 2 is an experience for just one person. And it's hard to share that experience with other people besides the people in that room. That, like, I guess maybe that's because I've been in this content creating game for way too long. But I'm just not hyped for it because I can't share that experience beyond its initial.
It's still such like a young platform.
It's so young
when you relate it to like video games in general, where like they're the Firewall 0 Hours of the world, which are the multiplayer shooters, but like those are few and far between. And also I understand the argument of why play this when I can just play Rainbow Six, or I can play Overwatch, or I can play PUBG or anything else. That said, right, like it excites me because VR in general is a thing that I've had a lot of fun with, specifically with games like Beat Saber and Astrobot and Trover and Blood and Truth, right? Like a lot of the PlayStation library of VR games I have such a good time with. And I want to see that resurgence. I think there's been a bit of a lull when it comes to VR stuff on PlayStation, and I think part of that has just been the ramp toward PlayStation VR 2. But I just remember I had such a good time playing especially Beat Saber and Astrobot. Like those were experiences that had me like, oh, this is legitimate. Like, this is blowing my mind right now.
It's cool. I love VR. It's fantastic. You ever done one of those VR experiences in those brick and mortar stores? It's fantastic. But to be able to have that at home, it just feels weird to like for it to come out now. But I guess I think it's like people wanting that experience of getting out of their house.
I think it's also just that PlayStation tends to believe in it both as a I guess I'll say a medium, right? Like I think they believe in the technology, and also it's a uniquely PlayStation thing to some extent, at least in the console space. Of course, there's plenty of other VR, but you know, Microsoft doesn't do it, Nintendo doesn't do it. I think PlayStation being able to go, hey, if you want VR on console, we got you, and it's going to be for an affordable price, and it's going to be affordable relatively, I should say, and maybe not against Oculus Quest anymore, because Oculus Quest is killing it in terms of price, but actually they went up in price, so maybe not. But like, you know, as a console VR thing, we are approachable and we have the games for you, and you have like, maybe you already have RE7 on your PlayStation. Guess what? You can play that in PSVR too, right? You have like a lot of that stuff going for it there.
Just because you can doesn't mean you should, though, right?
It's dude, right now I'm like, people at PlayStation are probably sweating after raising the prices of PS5s around the world. Oh, for sure. There are people over there like, oh, damn, maybe if we didn't do PSVR 2, this might be a bit easier. But now we got to commit to it because we're this far ahead of it.
Yeah. But for me, it's when you're looking at it there's a hole in the game and you wanting to fill that hole because there's a reason why Microsoft is not investing in it. Barrett said so himself. They have so much resources they could invest in if they want to. But I think it's just more of those things like, go ahead, PlayStation, make VR. You could have that market. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Take it.
Oh, 100%.
So, you know, I just don't think it's like, if you're going to invest in VR and if you want to play VR, you'll go Oculus over PlayStation right now. I mean,
Oh,
I
for
mean,
sure.
that's just the way it is when you look at the optics of the situation.
Sancho, let's get into PlayStation picks. Of course, this is where we talk about the games coming out this week and the one thing each of us have been playing on our PlayStations. Starting with the drop, this week we got Midnight Fight Express for PS4. That dropped Tuesday, August 23rd. Saints Row for PS5 and PS4. That came out Tuesday, August 23rd. SD Gundam Battle Alliance. That is out on PS5 and PS4 on Thursday, August 25th. Pac-Man World Repack is out for PS5 and PS4 on Friday, August 26th. And then Soul Hackers 2 is out on PS5 and PS4 on Friday, August 26th. Sancho, what'd you pick to play on PlayStation this week?
Man, I want to play Saints Row. I really do, because I like games that are strange and that anything could happen, because the game's a little bit janky, but I like that. That's my jam, dude. It's like my greasy food. I'm all for that. I'm going to cheat on this one because I think it deserves your attention, for those of you that haven't given your attention, but you need to play Rumbleverse, okay? Rumbleverse is really good, and it's picking up steam slowly but surely. You're getting people who are getting to understand the minutia of it. Iron Galaxy has ironed out problems that it's been having since launch, especially with their servers. And I thinking that with a lot of tutorials coming out on social media, the community wants more people to play it. And it's just something that I enjoy a lot. It's a battle royale, but it's more fighting game. As you can see, the footage is being played. If you're an audio listener, you should definitely check it out. There's a lot of people on Twitch right now that are playing it. And I just think it is the reason why it works so well. It's because, as I remember Andrea Renee saying on What's Good Games, is that you understand why you lose. It's right there in your face. Why you lost is because you got outplayed, and you could get better in it. And the carrot to chase the carrot to getting better, it's there. There's a great playground play. Snowbike Mike loves it, plays it, and it's just really, really good. And one of their goals that they talk about, Blessing, is that they wanted you to, even though you lost, to have fun while losing. And it does have that little bit of an itch that they're going for. So I definitely would suggest Rumbleverse. If you haven't tried it, it's free. It's not only available on PlayStation, it's available on everything except Nintendo Switch. And I think it's worth your time. But no, you will get worked if you don't do a little bit of playground. Just get in there. You do some research a little bit, play around with the combos. If my advice, it's about reading moves, because it's a priority system. It's a very sophisticated rock, paper, scissors, Yomi type game where you have to read your opponent. One thing beats another. If you could figure out that order, you're going to be okay.
Rumbleverse is one that I'm almost ashamed that I've not played more of it, because it is 1000% my kind of game,
bro.
Yeah,
it's your jam, bro.
Like, I like a good battle royale. I love fighting games, right? Like, the art style appeals to me. The like it being wrestling too. I like wrestling, right? I like wrestling video games.
Where's the butt?
But I've been playing multiverses, man. You know, multiverses is dominated.
Is good. Wait,
yeah.
Who's your main?
I go back and forth between LeBron James and
LeBron's
Finn.
great. Okay.
Yeah, I want to try out Morty though. Morty looks cool.
Superman, right here, baby.
Oh, you're one of them Superman kids?
Oh, one of them Superman kids. I see you on top of that. Yeah, yeet. I throw you up in the sky, dude. I love it, dude.
Man, at least you're not one of them Iron Giants out there, because I can't stand the Iron Giants. It's like, why are you taking up all this screen space?
I can't stand Bugs Bunny. I can't stand Bugs Bunnies, dude. I'm glad they nerfed that bat. That bat was ridiculous.
Oh my god. Yeah.
Multiverses, yes, you should play that as well. I know you have here. You should play Saints Row. Why is that?
Well, no, I'm not. This isn't me saying you should play Saints Row. This is me saying I played Saints Row, right? So Saints Row is one of my picks, right? I played it for review. I did not like it.
I heard.
You listen to the KindaFunny Games Stats for the full review, of course. I rage quit that game. It was such a bummer, right?
Yeah.
It was one that I was looking forward to, because I've loved Saints Row games in the past, right? Like, I like the goofiness and the wackiness of Saints Row, and then also, like, when it comes to an open world city game, you know, that's for sure gonna be my jam. And Saints Row is one that, like, you know, seeing the behind closed door stuff and then also doing the preview, it was a game that that had so much potential in terms of
that vibe,
what it was setting up. Where you get into the world, and it's fun seeing people kind of discover it in real time, where people are like, oh, I played the first 2 hours. I played the first 3 hours. It doesn't seem that bad. And then a few hours later, they're like, man, what the fuck is up with this game, man? It's one of those where it starts off with so much potential, so much going for it. And I think squanders pretty much all of it. I got real frustrated into it because I was like, dude, they're doing nothing for story and characters. They're doing not much for evolving the gameplay here.
Yeah.
It is janky. I kept getting more bugs. The driving was not growing on me, and it just
Yeah.
became a chore to play after a while.
I've been there before, man. You know, you go and they feed you and you see the best you see the best of what the game has to offer. But I think like now that everybody knows what to expect, I think you could like maybe if you neuralized yourself and you were told that this is what you're gonna get, I think you would have enjoyed it a little bit more.
I don't think so, man.
A
I don't
little
think
bit
so.
more.
Because listen, I knew
little
what
bit more.
I knew what I was getting to some extent. Because
Okay.
I had played the game, right? And
I
I had,
know.
from that preview, I had tempered my expectations, right? Like I was like, okay, cool. This seems like it has some good stuff about it. It seems like it has some real jank stuff about it. But hopefully, in the end, the good stuff outweighs the jank stuff. And the more you play it, the more it's just like, like I was going into this with caveats and all, right? Hey, I'm gonna enjoy it for what it is. That's what I was. That was the vibe when I was going into the game.
Right.
And so for the fact that I couldn't enjoy it for what it was, I think for me speaks volumes, right? Where I just couldn't get with it. I was down to like set aside the bullshitty parts of the game, but like that's just that stuff just kept creeping through more and more.
But dude, it's one of my favorite reviews y'all guys did because you'd be like, yeah, you know, this and that, but
yeah, it always comes to but.
Yeah, it always
comes to but.
It would always come in. So yeah, to review, you know, if I had to pick from on the list, I like the idea that Gundam's coming back. You know, Gundam first person shooter was a thing, and now you have another like a type of open world Gundam from what I've seen from the footage. So. But at the same time, you know, try Rumbleverse and Multiverses. I mean, it's good to have a fighting game. Video games needs fighting games. It just does. And to see Street Fighter coming out with an open world type vibe as well, that gets me excited. But you need to have every kind of video game needs a fighting game, and to have multiverses take place of that platforming void that Smash left. To have a Rumbleverse step in to be the first time in a long time a battle royale. I know there's Nakara and things like that, but this is more of a brawler. To have that fill that void. So, in a world that Rumbleverse could be at EVO, that sounds amazing to me. To have that. The idea that maybe Marvel versus Capcom one day will come back, when that comes back, we're talking about some
arcade,
good times.
Baby. That arcade
This is what I'm saying. I
Yeah.
want to buy that arcade 1-up machine. It's slated to be the most expensive one because Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is one of the holy grails of video games, dude. You look at it, the Dreamcast, expensive. The PlayStation 2 is one of the most expensive games out there sealed. I have the X-Men versus Street Fighter one out there. But yes, video games needs fighting games, so support those. Please, please, please.
Hell yeah. One that I didn't put down here, but I did play a little bit of earlier this week. Of course, you'll know that I'm reviewing Last of Us Part 1. And if you remember playing Last of Us back in the day, like, when I played Last of Us, part of that experience for me was like hopping out after every chapter and playing some Last of Us Factions multiplayer. And while playing the review, I was like, I can go for some Factions multiplayer.
Yeah.
So I booted up Factions multiplayer and I played quite a few matches of Factions multiplayer this week. And that game still has it, man. Like,
I'm telling you,
it is such a good multiplayer mode that that is underrated. That is fucking like Naughty Dog has its stuff when it comes to multiplayer, and like, yeah, dude, that mode goes hard.
It goes.
We got to get Factions soon.
You guys, you gotta, folks out there, you gotta understand that this mode is underutilized. It's a cult classic. It's underrated. I've made so much videos on it. If you want to get into it, look at my tutorials. You'll understand the very basics of it. There's a lot of other tutorials about it. It is, the problem is right now, if I'm gonna be upfront with you, is the lobbies are still great. You'll get games.
Yeah.
Really,
I was surprised to find some games.
Yeah, you'll find a lot of games because what it does is it keeps you in the same lobby for like a good 5 games in a row, but it mixes up everybody and balances out. You're gonna run into people that are really, really good.
Oh yeah, I ran into some killers.
It is what it is. Just avoid the party lists, play by yourself, and then no party to get in there and enjoy that. If you interrogations is good to understand the mechanics, to get used to shooting things because it's a respawn mode. Survivors, the people play weird and they camp out a lot, but supply rate is where it's at. And I know Blessing likes Survivors a lot. But you want to get into the supply rate and just try it out because it's one of those great experiences. And I think what gets people a lot of jaded, Blessing, I'm glad we're ending this podcast on this button about the factions, is that a lot of people didn't like the trophy system to go if you didn't want to play the game but you needed it for the trophies, you're not going to enjoy the multiplayer. But now that maybe from what I understand, because The Last of Us Part 1 does not have factions, just go back, play it, enjoy it, understand why we're crazy about it. And every time I'm on the show, I will talk about it because it's one of the best experiences ever. And I think that you deserve a chance. You deserve a chance to experience what it's like to be the last player standing, because that experience, and then Gustavo's music kicks in, and it's the drums are kicking in, and you're the last one, and there's 4 other people alive, and you're trying to survive. There's nothing like that. In battle royales, try to capture this experience, and Naughty Dog captured it in a multiplayer.
1000%. Sancho, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of PS Love You XOXO. For people who want to hear more from you, where can they check out your content?
You can find me at everything on Sancho West, which is exciting to as well, because I like a lot of Last of Us. If you want to see the content I have on YouTube, and considering Twitch just announced that they stopped the exclusivity for partners, so we can stream wherever we like. I do plan to stream factions on my YouTube channel, so hit me up on Sancho West.
Dude, we gotta play together.
Dude, we gotta play together. It's gonna be amazing. And as well, I don't know if you noticed, but this is the Last of Us kind of the Shiv and Hammer shirt.
Oh, I thought it was a golf club. I thought it was a golf club.
No. The Hammer and the Shiv. We're rocking that. I'm still waiting for my, what was it, the bomber jacket from the Wolf. I never got it. It, Sony.
So this was damn wolves, man. You can't trust them. You can't trust them. Ellie was right all along. Remember, this has been PS I Love You XOXO, your PlayStation podcast. Each and every week we get together to talk about the hottest topics in PlayStation. We've got a Patreon post show for those that are subbed at the silver level of patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames. So stick around for that. Otherwise, until next time, game daily.